Houthi militia escalation causes unrest inside Yemen and drags the war beyond borders. UNICEF warns that the conflict in Yemen has dramatically increased casualties among children. Giants brigades continue to advance in Ma'rib and make important gains in the city. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rana Swaidam. The UAE Ministry of Defense said it intercepted and destroyed 2 ballistic missiles launched by Houthis without causing any casualties. It said that it intercepted and destroyed the ballistic missiles and the remaining parts landed in separate areas around Abu Dhabi. The attack, which took place today, Monday, is the second attack on the territory of the UAE since the attack last week, which targeted a fuel depot in the capital Abu Dhabi, killing 3 people and setting a fire near its international airport. The coalition in Yemen announced that Houthi militia launched a brutal attack with a ballistic missile that fell in an industrial area in Jazan, southwest of Saudi Arabia. The coalition also announced that it had intercepted and destroyed 2 drones that took off from the Yemeni governorate of Al Jawf, pointing out that it's following the rest of the booby-trapped drones that were launched from the Yemeni governorate. The coalition stated that this is the 3rd attempt to target civilians of different nationalities in the industrial area in Jazan. Yemeni Foreign Ministry condemned in the strongest terms the Houthi militia's continued firing of ballistic missiles and drones towards Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The ministry stressed that these terrorist attacks indicate the Houthis' insistence on threatening the security and stability of the region. It called on the international community to fulfill its responsibilities and classify the militia as an organized terrorist group in order to achieve international peace and security. The Arab League Council issued a statement regarding Houthi attacks in Abu Dhabi. During an extraordinary session, the Council strongly condemned the brutal terrorist attack. It stressed that the need for the international community to stand united in face of this terrorist act that threatens regional and international peace and stability. Yemen's conflict shows no signs of ending soon, and the future seems blurry. This becomes evident, especially with Houthi rebels' current escalation inside and outside the country. Today, rebel militia fired missiles at the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Observers see this recent development as an indication to the real threat that Houthis pose, not only on Yemen but the entire region. The following report has more details.
While the giant brigades are making gains in the Yemeni war, the Houthis are trying to incur heavy costs on Abu Dhabi due to its involvement in the battle for legitimacy. On the 17th of this month, a series of Houthi drone attacks targeted fuel trucks in Al Mushaf industrial area outside Abu Dhabi city, as well as a site under construction at the capital's international airport. The Houthi attack killed 3 people and wounded 6 others, which is the first time that the conflict in Yemen has caused death within the United Arab Emirates. The attacks are not considered a surprise, but rather an escalation by the Houthi rebels. While the group claimed responsibility for the strikes, it reported that it targeted various sites in the UAE with many missiles and drones. The incident was also portrayed as a response to the military victories scored recently in key areas in the Yemeni conflict, especially Shabwa and Ma'rib. Last week, under the banner of a new operation of the coalition, the Giant Brigades and their allies expelled the Houthis from important parts of Shabwa Governorate in the south and began their battle to seize parts of Ma'rib as well. This last advance in the two strategic governorates is seen as key victory that will shape the future of Yemen as a whole. The Giant Brigade's advance is pushing hard on the rebels and may confine them to the capital Sana'a, then in their last resort in Sa'da to the far north of Yemen. This one, if made, will push Houthi rebels back to where they have been 7 years ago. Looking at this grim future, the rebels are making their last efforts to destabilize the situation by random attacks inside and outside Yemen. Further, the recent escalation by the Houthi rebels requires a solid and a unified Arab and international stance in facing these terrorist attacks that are meant to convey a threatening message to the region through the rebels and their Iranian allies.
The British Royal Navy said it had thwarted the smuggling of drug shipments estimated at more than a ton in the Gulf of Oman. The cargo was likely on its way to the Houthi militia in Yemen. In a statement, the British Ministry of Defense stated that the drug shipment was estimated to be worth approximately £15 million. Earlier, U.S. forces discovered 40 tons of fertilizer that is also known to be used as an explosive activist inside a stateless fishing vessel in the Gulf of Oman. The Giant Brigades announced the liberation of Harib city in Ma'rib after clashes which forced the Houthi terrorist militia to flee and retreat. According to field sources, the brigades circled the Houthi militia from several sides after a clash that started since early morning. The following report has more details.
For the first time since the military operation announced earlier this month by the coalition, large areas such as Shabwa have been restored, and a transition is being made to liberate the areas controlled by the rebels in Ma'rib. Pressure indeed is mounting on the Houthi rebels in the fronts south of Ma'rib. The fighting edge is rolling again at the rebels in the governorate, where they were seeking in the past month to penetrate. Ma'rib, the oil-rich governorate, is considered as the last stronghold of legitimacy. After getting Shabwa, the Giant Brigades that line up with the government forces backed by the tribes pushed further into neighboring Ma'rib. Field sources confirmed that the forces of Giant Brigades liberated Harib district amid a complete collapse of the Houthi militia after confrontations that lasted for several days. The media center for the Giant Brigades reported that its forces advanced in the field and took control of the mountains of Shuqir, Qarn, Matfoon suburbs overlooking Harib. The center also mentioned the control of Giant Brigades over mountains overlooking Ghafra to Al Abdiya Road in Ma'rib Governorate. Information reported by the media center indicated that violent battles between the two sides occurred, through which Giant Brigades were able to inflict heavy losses on the rebels both in lives and equipment. In the same context, field sources confirmed that the Giant Brigades managed to comb Ain district in Shabwa. They cleared the remaining pockets in which the Houthi rebels were hiding. Politically, victories of the forces of legitimacy in Yemen, if completed, will corner the Houthi rebels and will force them back to the negotiation table.
To that end, the Yemeni Chief of Staff Saghir bin Aziz visited the battlefronts south of Ma'rib. During the visit, Aziz affirmed that the victory over the Houthi militia is sure and near. The government forces announced it carried out artillery shelling against Houthi militia in Hajjah Governorate, northwest of Yemen. The shelling targeted gatherings of Houthi militants in Harad district and resulted in losses among Houthis in lives and equipment. A recent report by UNICEF on Yemen reveals that the violence has rapidly escalated since the year began, taking a steep turn in several locations across Yemen. According to the report, the number of children killed only since the beginning of the year is 17. This is nearly double the number during last December. More details on this story are within this report.
Violence has rapidly escalated since the year began, taking a steep turn in several locations across Yemen, UNICEF said. According to reports, the number of children killed only since the beginning of the year is 17. This is nearly double the number since last December. Children in Yemen continue to be the first and most to pay, almost 7 years on one of the most brutal armed conflicts in recent history. UNICEF called on all parties involved in the war against Yemen and those with influence over them to protect civilians, including children, at all times. According to the report, civilian populated areas and civilian infrastructure, including education and medical facilities, must never be a target and should always be protected. Since the conflict escalated in Yemen, UNICEF verified that more than 10,000 children have been injured or killed. The actual number is likely much higher. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the escalation needs to stop.
This escalation needs to stop.
In a statement issued by his spokesperson, he said the airstrikes, which included other parts of the country, had resulted in child casualties, and he reminded all parties that attacks against civilians and civilian infrastructure are forbidden by international humanitarian law. The war has left hundreds of thousands of Yemenis dead and displaced millions more. It also destroyed Yemen's infrastructure and spread famine and diseases everywhere. The UN estimates that the war in Yemen had killed 377,000 people by the end of 2021, both directly and indirectly through hunger and diseases. Millions more have been displaced. For how long can this continue?
Coming next. The world celebrates the International Education Day, while Houthi militia continues to deplete education in the country.
راتب الواحد 120 ألف، والكيس الدقيق ب18,000، والكيس السكر اليوم ب20,000. كم يعني بيعطي هذا الراتب كامل كيس سكر وكيس دقيق؟
المواطن اليمني يعيش في أزمة إنسانية وغذائية مؤلمة من غلاء الأسعار وفحشة الأسعار وغلاء الصرف والعملة الأجنبية في البلد.
حالتي حالة لما خرج لما ندفنا شقيرة ما نقدرش ناكل الأكل داخل، ما إحنا بحاجة صعبة.
Every student across the world at some point of time hopes to see that blissful moment when they wake up in the morning and school is somehow magically closed. The idea of exams getting cancelled is a dream only some of us dare to see. However, for 2 million children in Yemen living in the biggest man-made humanitarian crisis since 2015, the thought of going to school is a distant dream they only get to see in their sleep. The following report has more details.
In Yemen, attacks on children continue with no end in sight, as warring parties flout one of the most basic rules of war, which is the protection of children. Today marks the International Day of Education. This day was established to raise awareness of the plight of millions of children living in countries affected by conflict. The General Assembly resolution affirms that governments have the primary responsibility to provide protection and ensure inclusive and quality education at all levels to all learners, especially those in vulnerable situations. On the International Day of Education, the UN is sending a clear message regarding the importance of safeguarding schools as places of protection and safety for students and educators, and the need to keep education at the top of the public agenda.
The time has come to reignite our collective commitment to education. That means investing in comprehensive plans to help students recover from learning losses. It means putting education at the heart of broader recovery efforts, aiming at transforming economies and societies and accelerating progress on sustainable development.
Education in Yemen is still hijacked by the Houthi militia. A child's right to education cannot be safeguarded in conflict zones without education itself being protected. Education can be a lifesaver. Out-of-school children are easy targets of abuse, exploitation, and recruitment by the Houthi rebels. Schools should provide a safe space where children can be protected from threats in crisis.
The share of children leaving school in developing countries who are unable to read would increase from 53 to 70%. But the turmoil in education goes beyond questions of access and inequality. Our world is changing at a dizzying pace with technological innovation, unprecedented changes in the world of work, the onset of the climate emergency, and the widespread loss of trust between people and institutions.
The protracted nature of the conflict today is affecting the futures of entire generations of children. Without access to education, a generation of children living in Yemen amid the conflict will grow up without the skills they need to contribute to their country and economy, exacerbating the already desperate situation for millions of children and their families.
Work is underway to establish the first medical city in the west coast of Hodeidah. This huge project will provide medical services for thousands of locals who travel far distances to get medical treatment. The following report has more details.
Construction work continues in the largest medical city on the west coast, whose opening is scheduled to allow residents to obtain medical services that they have been lacking for years, especially surgical operations that required them to move to other cities. The lack of important medical departments and specializations in the health sector on the western coast made it hard for people to obtain, especially after the Houthi militia cut the public roads linking Yemeni cities, which hindered their smooth access.
This city was established under the auspices of General Tariq Saleh. This project is giant and is considered a qualitative leap in Makha district and the West Coast. We thank our brothers in the United Arab Emirates for their support in all fields, especially the medical field. Work is underway to complete this project that will include many medical specialties such as surgery, orthopedics, dentistry, and ophthalmology.
The city, which is expected to bear the name of Sheikh Zayed bin Nahyan, will contribute along with the Saudi hospital to enhancing the performance of the medical sector, which was greatly affected by the devastating war of the Houthi militia, and will provide its services to the displaced and the host community.
Now we are in the last phase of construction. The completion rate has now reached 90%. The city buildings are expected to be delivered in at least a month.
The construction work in the city of Makha is not limited to homes and private residences, but rather facilities in the medical city will provide all medical specialties to the residents of the West Coast.
Yemeni Telecommunication Authority said it's ready to fix the damage in the internet communication. It called upon regulating companies that are under the Houthi control to cooperate in order to reconnect the damaged cables. The losses in Yemen due to the internet outage amount to about $4 million per day. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The Houthi militia escalation causes unrest inside Yemen and drags the war beyond borders. UNICEF warns that the conflict in Yemen has dramatically increased casualties among children. Giants brigades continue to advance in Nerib and make important gains in the city. This is the end of the news. For more, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Yemen Today English. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.